Welcome back to Pal2Pal, the podcast where we connect the dots in global workforce and the remote teams. Today, we have a very special guest that we have been wanting to bring for a very long time. We're going to be talking with Maria Collazo, as we like to call her, Meri. She's our global head of people, and we're really excited to talk about a lot of great topics today. So, Meri, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to start working here at Tecspal?
So hello, Rich. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm really happy to be here. I am Meri. I am head of people at Tecspal. I started in March, but it seems like years working here. I'm a psychologist. I'm also have like 5 years, more than 5 years in experience working in roles of head of people. And I also teach in the university, psychology and organizational behavior.
That's very interesting. So I know pretty much when I started back in January, Tecspal, didn't really have a very built system of HR, right? We were incorporating ourselves and growing out the team in various places. What was your first thought when you joined and we were expanding into Mexico, into the Philippines?
Yeah, when I first joined Tecspal, we don't have people processes at all. I love to building processes and I love to building the area from scratch. Tecspal didn't have the processes, but it had the culture. So that was my first impression. Like we had something big here. The people working here had the culture. Everything was all there. Everything was there. I had to build it up and put some structure.
Definitely. And I think right now that's one of the main things that most companies, tend to be really not so good at, right? Just building the culture. And I think one of the first things that it's great to have in an organization is the culture. When you started building out these processes, what was like the major impact or one of the hardest things that you thought was?
For me, culture is difficult to build from scratch because you cannot impose the culture. The culture is there. You have to understand it and know which aspect you want to highlight and which aspect you want to represent because it's good to the business, and which are the aspects that maybe we have to change it a little bit or to don't highlight. So culture is already there. You need to highlight and show to the rest of the people we are this. It's something that is really difficult to explain. And for me, the most complex things was we have a really Uruguayan culture. We are really close to people. We are really caring and touchy, Latino culture. So for me, it was this huge question. It will work in Asia. It will work in some other countries. I know that Mexico is pretty close and we are pretty similar in some stuff. In others, no. But the culture was there. My big question was, it makes sense for people. They would like to have this kind of informality in the way of speaking, but also excellence in driving process. So we focus on going to the interviews with a really knowing how we want our people and our cultural fit to be there. So we know with things we were looking in the people that get to APAC and the people that also get to Mexico. So it's not like Latino culture is Tecspal culture, and we find our people.
Right, definitely. And I think right now, what main thing that we want to talk about today is that distributed work, the hybrid, and I think as of the pandemic, everybody went back to fully remote, and a lot of the companies started being remote first. I think right now, as of 2 years, a lot of the companies are starting to do a lot of on-site things, and a lot of companies are starting to, have those co-working spaces and have the people, join at least, once a week to get the people back together. What are your thoughts on that remote workforce, that hybrid model?
I love hybrid model. I'm a people person, so I love to be in the office. I have experience working in a full remote environment, and to be honest, I think that both options work. You need to understand your context, and you need to highlight the process and how you are going to make people work together and make people interact. There are a lot of ways you can get people together in a remote culture. You can have We have like we play video games online each Friday. You can have escape rooms online that are awesome. Like you can also have online marathons. There's a lot of activities you can find and put your thoughts online. I think that the hybrid model is the most rich one because there is something special about being in the office, but you can translate your office to the online world, like make Slack work for remote places and change the hallway of the office to the
Right.
hallway of Slack.
Definitely. And I think right now, like a lot of HR people, their culture, their people operations, when you are in a startup, the HR head is usually the person that wears many hats, right? They have to do the onboarding process. They have to also be the one that does the termination. They have to also talk to the employee. They also have to manage leadership and they have to help out everywhere they can. What is it that you do for organizations, or what are your best tips to kind of handle all of that?
It all starts with good communication. You need to know that in startups, and this is pretty common in startups, you have to put a lot of hats because we are growing and we need to be in the game as soon as possible. So my best advice is like to understand that you will be doing a lot, and this is pretty meaningful because you are the person that people reach for like any question about people and how to handle your people. So you need to like be organized and understand the different departments inside people and know that you will be the manager of all of them and be in charge.
Definitely. So one of the main things that I feel Tecspal helps companies with is part of the onboarding process, right? We understand that the onboarding process is a very crucial thing for a company because it sets foot of the life that that person's going to have within the organization. What can you tell us about the onboarding process when someone starts in an organization, and how you make that better for them?
For me, onboarding is like you invite someone to your home for the first time. So it's a responsibility of the company to make the employee comfortable. And I think that that is like a change of mindset because we come from like a culture of congratulations, you earned this job, so like show yourself. So companies expect to people in the first month like to be excellent at the roles, but we need to understand that it's a process of adaptation and people need to like build that trust and build that confidence in the company because when you
Right.
start a job you don't know what you are like face yourself in that job.
Definitely. And I think right now, there's two types of onboarding, right? There's the remote onboarding and then there's the on-site onboarding. Usually, which one do you think it's easier? Which one do you feel is kind of like the most practical, or what are the tips that you can give people out on our viewers when they handle a remote onboarding, right?
Yeah, you don't need to be like light in onboarding. Onboarding is a process that you need to plan it like way ahead of the person starting the job. Obviously, the basic, you need to make sure that that person will have the computer before. But also you need to make sure that you have all the requirements regarding contracts, expectations, people in the team knowing that this person will be there and will be starting the new jobs. And you need to have a plan besides, okay, she's starting or he's starting and he will do this task that we need. So for me, remote onboarding and in-person onboarding works like equally if you have all the plan and the basic like running up, and it's practically the same to give the person the computer in the office and also like to make sure the person will receive that computer. If the computer has all the systems that the person needs and when they receive the equipment they know that they will be like having the first onboarding interview at 9 a.m. and like they will have a structure of how that first day of work looks.
Definitely.
It works.
Definitely. And I think right now when, you have that hybrid model and you have people that are working remotely, I think here at Tecspal, we have people in Brazil, we have people in Argentina, and in Mexico, and obviously here in Uruguay. How you as an HR, do it all? How do you combine and get those people together?
It's hard.
It is.
And I need to get better at that. It's really hard that we are working and we are going there. We are working in like having more meaningful conversations in Slack also to build more meaningful conversation between the team, like random conversations, because this usually happen, like people tend to like build trust and confidence with the people that are working in the same team or in the same project. And we don't want to divide like teams or projects in countries. We want to divide teams in like tasks. So we are working there. I think that the best tool for that is creating conversations, creating space to talk about things. It can be work things, but also it can be like life stuff. Like for me, it's really important to know that someone in our team in Filipinas is like buying his new or her new home, and also here someone is going to be a father or a mother. For me, it's
Right.
important to connect in the more personal level also.
Definitely. And I think right now that's a very good conversation because I feel a lot of HR people are not vulnerable. And I think being vulnerable in an HR space, it's okay because I feel a lot of people when they work with HR, they see them as this perfect, department that does nothing wrong. And it's really great to talk to someone, that it's okay. I don't have everything figured out, but we're going to fix it, right? And I'm aware of a lot of these things and we're going to get there. And I think that it's great to have like that openness and that communication for us to kind of understand each other. What other things do you think you can make someone that's starting in HR and that's starting their remote team? What other things can you let them know that they're going to be going through?
HR people are not perfect because nobody is perfect, and you need to understand that. You need to understand that you are not the culture of a company. You are like the person that makes things like run and
Right.
make culture like alive, but you are not the culture, and you are not the problems, and you are like in charge of handling, but you also cannot resolve everything because we work with
Definitely.
people. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think right now, like a lot of the same issues they escalate because there's no communication, right? I feel this way. I never tell my boss. We never have those meaningful conversations where, hey, I feel I'm being ignored. You feel that I'm not talking to you, and it just starts bottling it up. And I think that's where a lot of the communication starts to happen. And I think when you build remote teams, it's an even bigger layer of miscommunication because I don't see you face to face. I may read something in Slack and I may take it differently. I'm also a different culture from yours. And I feel when you build a remote team or a hybrid team, there's my culture as someone that's from Mexico, there's your culture as someone that's from Uruguay, but then we have to build this new culture, which is, the culture of Tecspal or the culture of whichever company that you work for, right? And I think right now, one of the major things that is shifting the world is the start of global expansion, right? All of these companies are going fully remote, expanding into different markets, and they're building teams way faster. And obviously, we're part of that shift, right? Because we're helping companies go, 360 in one day, right? Now they can expand into Africa, Germany, London, right? In a matter of days, and we can help them achieve that, right? So I think as far as the remote shift that we're going is we really want to understand all of that. And I think to your points that you've just mentioned is like, that great shift. And I think part of HR is a very big point, right? It's a, it's a huge kind of shift that's occurring. But yeah, going back to that.
Regarding the remote environment, I think that we need to understand that when we are talking about 100% remote environment, conversations will not be like spontaneous. You need to make the space of them. Like you are at your home, I am at my house. Like we are not going to speak if I don't call you. So we need to make that structured spaces of conversation, and it's responsibility of leaders and also of HR to make sure that these spaces, besides being structured and being planned, are like informal, spontaneous, and we can build trust in that like spaces. For that, I love one-on-ones. I think that are the best tool in a 100% environment.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad that you touched on one-on-ones because I feel one-on-ones, a lot of people take them as checkpoints. I'm reporting to you and I need to go step one, step two, or like bullet point one, bullet point two, and just tell you what I did, what my tasks are. But I feel when you have a one-on-one, it's more of this is how I feel, this is what I need. this is what we should do together, this is what we can achieve, and just have that more of a meaningful conversation. So when you're setting up like these remote one-on-ones for your company, what are the tips that you would say are kind of like the best practices when you're
You say, for me, the most important thing is you don't need to go to a one-on-one thinking that it will be a checkout point. Like, okay, what is block you? How can I help you? Let's do like this and that in work. One-on-ones are like more building up conversations, and it's a space to build trust and psychological safety. So you need to have that space. And sometimes one-on-one will, like, we speak with the leadership team last week, but sometimes it can be like 5 minutes because you see the person and they don't want to talk about it. Like maybe
Definitely.
they are full of work and maybe they're having a bad day, but okay, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, okay, perfect. But you will be there next week and next week. And when things come up and when people need to talk about frustrations or things that are happening in work, but also in life, because we are impacted in our life. We are impacting our work by our life. That space will be there. So my best tip is go open, and it's meaningful conversation. Maybe the first time you will not have any type of information, and that's good. Like, don't expect to have like information and in everything, every interact, be open. And
Right.
when someone will speak to you, they will be open up, and you need to create that space.
Definitely. And I think right now, what's safe to say is, as you build teams, when you have a very global team, language is also a barrier, right? What's great to work with is English is not everyone's first language, right? And I think right now we communicate in different ways, food, music. So there's a lot of way that people connect, right? But I feel right now when we're shifting into, these different languages and understanding how people work, how do you feel when you've onboarded, the people in Philippines? What was the hardest thing of understanding how they worked? How do you talk to them, or what is it that is different as you onboard people that are completely, because I think when you onboard someone from LATAM, it's a little bit more similar in some ways. But for people that are in Europe, that are a complete different culture, how do you feel that's going to be, shifting?
You said like earlier, is vulnerability. When we are talking in our second language, you feel vulnerable, like
Right.
me right now. You feel like more naked because you feel more comfortable in your first language skin. Like you know that you can like own it and handle, and it will be like 100 times better the conversation. But you need to face vulnerability. And I think that talking about English as a second language, people don't want to speak it because they don't feel 100% comfortable. And this happened in Philippines also because there is the second language, and this is my second language, so we will have a lot of accents here. But I really love to express my vulnerability, because when I say this stuff on onboardings and like, okay, I'm nervous, you can correct me if you understand me, or like you can say me like to speak again, people immediately like release, because this will not
Definitely.
be
Yeah.
structure. And okay, I'm in the same page as you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad that you talked about it, because I think people, whenever they're trying to learn a new language or they're trying to speak with someone that probably knows better English or better Spanish, they tend to, be less. Sometimes when I wish people would understand me more in Spanish, but I feel I'm two different people, right? When I speak in English, I'm one personality, and then when talking in Spanish, I'm a different person. And honestly, I wish people know that I'm funnier in Spanish than when I'm speaking English. And I think when I speak English, I think I'm more professional versus when I'm taking in Spanish, right? So I think those are kind of like two
You are
things.
professional also in Spanish.
Thank you. But I do feel that a lot of people struggle with that. They have two different types of ways whenever they're one way when they speak Spanish, and then they're one way. And I'm sure, our people in the Philippines probably are the same, right? They're one way when they're speaking in English, which usually English is required for their work, right? And then they speak, Tagalog whenever they're, with their families. But yeah, I think overall what we want to talk about, dive a little bit further in, is the other part is the offboarding process, right? We talked a little bit about what it's like to work, how to bring someone in. When we terminate someone, or when we offboard someone, so what is the hardest part, right? Like, terminating someone I think that also has two pieces, right? It's the remote one, where it's kind of like the colder one, where it's like through a camera, and obviously people are blindsided, they don't understand. So that's the other side of HR that people probably don't get to see, right? Because at the end of the day, I feel you're a human. You feel for the person, right? Because you brought them in and now it didn't work out and you have to, the company made a decision. How do you handle that? Like what goes through your mind through that whole process?
It's really hard because you are the person that you are the responsible of making people feel safe and comfortable, and usually you are the one that like brings good news and make up events and make people bring together and like have these conversations like super honest, like you are not performing well, how can we help you, how can we make a plan. But when that conversation is there, for me in a personal level, is there will be always the hardest conversations I will have, but I try to take it with like responsibility and ownership of that questions, and know that besides everything that I am feeling, the other person is the most important stuff, and everything that is feeling the other
Right.
person is so much important that what happened in my head and in my heart and in myself. So for me, offboardings are 20 times more important than onboardings, because for me it's most important to make the person go out the company in the best way possible, and that is a hard stuff. Because we were talking on onboarding, okay, everything is cool, you are having this nice job and you finally have the job and you are working remote and this is a team is really cool and the first months are awesome. But when you are offboarding someone, like emotions are on the table and people are vulnerable, and to make people feel somehow a little bit more comfortable with the going out is the most important stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I think right now, like the offboarding process, I think every time it happens, it's like a life lesson to the company. I think most HR people, they do like an exit interview, right? We do also want to understand, because at the end of the day, you do let them go based on a performance reason, or there's, a cultural difference, or there's anything that may have gone on. But at the end of the day, there are some things that the person leaving the company has to say that probably is good advice or is good, an opinion that they have of a process that wasn't done correctly, right? So when you do those exit interviews, what do you take from them?
We are not a perfect company. I don't know if perfect company exists. And for me, like the most important thing is to be aware of that. We need to grow. We need to get better, because that is why we are growing, and that what it will make us the best ones. Like we need to take that feedback. We don't have all the answers. We are not the best managing people. We are working in it. We are learning. So the most important input is the input that when the person is going, because it's like they don't have nothing to lose, so they will
Right.
tell you things as they are. And for me, that always will be the most valuable thing, and I am really open to hear what the experience of that people.
Definitely. Well, thanks very much for that point. And I think as we wrap up kind of like the podcast, want to end it with like, what are your final thoughts? Like in regards to onboarding remote teams, anything else that you want to add?
People and companies and HR need to plan onboarding, and it's an investment, because good onboarding reduces the early turnover, and it's like first impressions. Like the first impressions stuck there in your head. So it's a process that it needs to be planned. It's not okay, you have the computer, you're done. No. People need to have some structures and guidance. They need to understand their expectations, the team that they are working in, the whole culture. They need to open the computer and know where to access and what meeting they will have and how the whole week will look. Is the best way of reducing early turnover, is the best way of like engaging your people and make them feel comfortable. And who doesn't like to be seen? Like good onboarding is okay, we were waiting for you, we are really happy that you are here, so here
Yeah.
is your computer, you are part of this.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And I think just as closing words, here at Tecspal, we do help out with all of the global onboardings in any part of the world. We're active in 140 countries. It's a good solution to have, right? And I think you as an HR person benefit from that. It's something that it takes a burden out of you because you don't have to worry about the different vendors. You just go online, go to the platform, make that order. So if you want to check that out more, I feel as a viewer and you're in HR and this was interesting to you, feel to check out our platform. We're active in LinkedIn and as well, our podcast will be live in all of the streaming channels. But thanks again, Meri. It was a very good pleasure to talk to you and I hope you have a blast. And I think as our final question, which we like to ask all of our guests, what do you feel makes a very good global remote employee?
Wow. Transparent, open communication. Someone that you have like thousands of miles away, but when you like have a huddle in Slack or meet, like you feel like you are like next to him drinking coffee or mate, like someone that you can feel close besides all that miles that you are away.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for your time and thanks everyone else for watching. Have a great day.
Yay.